Right, I'd like to welcome you to another Ginger GM video. I've had a long delay on the video front, mainly because I've been pretty busy with lots of other things going on, and I've tended just to stick to written notation of any games that I've played. But yeah, I'm back now with a very interesting game I had a couple of days ago in the French League. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't play the London Classic this year, which I really wanted to play because I was due to play for my Parisian team, Royal Maison, in the French League, and unfortunately, two of their games, really important games, clashed with London Classic, so I had to go and play for the team in the end. Now, this is a game I played on the Saturday with the black pieces against a French GM, Jean-Luc Chabanon. That's probably not how you pronounce his name, so I apologise there. But he's a Grandmaster about 2490, and the reason I picked this game is because it was in the Dutch defence in probably the most critical line at the moment. Currently, the only line where I think White can get aim, should I say, to get an advantage against 7 knight to e4. So anyone out there who plays the Dutch, who's got the killer Dutch, this game should be very useful to you to help you, give you some ideas for black. Now, let's get to the main position anyway, that we should have a look at. So, the game started d4, e6. We quickly get to the main line classical Dutch position, so I'll zoom straight ahead to that point. So knight to c3, and here I think the best move is knight to e4. Now obviously in the past I used to play a5 a lot. Now I actually believe this move has been refuted. I'll put the reasons for this in my forthcoming ebook. Yes, I do apologise to those viewers out there for the delay in the ebook. I meant to get this done about a year ago, and it's just been an ongoing project which has really zapped up a lot of my time to complete. I'm really hoping to get this done by the end of this week, so as soon as I get this video done I'll be back on the ebook punting away with that. But I think it's a very interesting ebook. It's going to have a lot of analysis on new stuff in there, and it's also going to have quite a lot of lines from the like I see what it's going to explain why I think a5 is a very bad move nowadays. But knight to e4, in my opinion, is a very underrated move, and originally I thought White could get an advantage here by catching on e4. Now I'm not actually sure this is true anymore, because the more I look at this, the less convinced I get from White's perspective. And indeed I've had this knight takes e4 plan 3 times in the last 3 months against quite decent opposition, 2 2300 players and a 2490, the person I'm playing here, and so far I've scored 3 out of 3 with black, which is a very promising promising sign. So let's get to critical position. After f takes knight d2, now this is the only way I think White can aim to get an advantage, d5, f3, which is the critical line. Now e3 is another move which White can try here, but I think black's very comfortable just by developing in sensible fashion and taking on f3. I don't think that White can really hope for any kind of advantage at all there. So I think f3 is White's only attempt in this variation to gain an advantage. Now the move I've been sticking to recently is knight to c6, and like I mentioned, this will be analysed in depth in the forthcoming ebook. White really now again can play e3 here, and then I take on f3, and I think that it's probably about an equal position. Again, this will be analysed in the ebook, but the most critical line is f takes e4, and originally in my video The Killer Dutch I said this should give White a small advantage. But are things so clear? Well, I'm not sure. Let's have a look how the game continued. Rook takes f1 check. Now, knight takes f1, which is a move practically everyone has chosen to play in this position. Also, king takes f1 is a very interesting move, again, which will be analysed deeply in the ebook. Now, this looks like a ridiculous idea, but in actual fact, it's not so stupid because the knight on d2 is well placed. So anyway, on to the game. Knight takes f1. Now, black has to take on c4, and the best move here is bishop to e3. Now, pawn to e3 is a mistake in my opinion, because black can just play e5, and already I think black is at least equal here. So White has to play bishop to e3, and it's clear around this point that my opponent had done a fair bit of preparation for the game, which is a bit upsetting because I didn't think Jean-Luc was renowned for his preparation, but he's obviously had a look at my games and pick this variation, but as it was a morning game, he hadn't probably had enough time to have a deep look at the variation, while this is one line I've spent a fair bit of time on recently, just because I think it's White's only attempt to gain advantage in this line in the Dutch, which is quite unbelievable, because if White can't gain an advantage in this line, that means the whole classical Dutch, in my opinion, is a very sound opening and a good way to get equality against 1d4. Okay, that's quite a brash statement, but you know, there's I mean, I'm going to keep playing it, and I think it's done me well so far. So here now, the move I've been playing recently, bishop to d7. Now, this makes a lot of sense because I want to really play the move b5 in a number of positions, but the problem, if I play this straight away, White can just play a4, and I can't continue with a6 because he takes on b5, and my rook is hanging down here. So I need to get a piece out of the way, bishop d7, so my queen can defend the rook, so b5 is possible. I also want to continue bishop e8 sometimes, and bring it around to the king side. So, interesting idea. Now, my opponent played a critical move here, e5. Other things will be looked at in the e-book. Now, this makes a lot of sense because it unleashes the bishop, and it places some pressure against b7 at some point, and d5 is a move I always have to watch out for now. Now, I think if I'm right in thinking, I mean, I played rook b8 in the game, which has worked very well for me, but the other move, which no one has yet to play in this position, which I think is really worth investigating, is the move bishop to e8. Now, this could be a very strong novelty if you want to use this in your future games, because the idea is actually after bishop to e4 to continue bishop to g6, which looks rather ridiculous, but after a subsequent exchange on g6, something like this, I think that black has the d5 square available for his queen. So one line, maybe that, I mean, if he goes queen c2, you can take on d4, and basically black's playing queen d5 next move, with very good control of the light squares, so the queen can get to e4. So it's a very interesting, unique position, but I don't think black's chances are any worse here. So I'm not even sure how White gets an advantage against this bishop d7 move, and like I said, if he can't get an advantage, then happy days for any classical Dutch player out there. You should, you know, it's quite an important move to have in your repertoire, in this bishop d7. Anyway, the game continued, rook to b8. So I want to go b5, logical. My opponent played rook to c1. Now I think this is a mistake. Ben Savage actually in a previous game played bishop to e4, and this is a better attempt to get an advantage, but again I went on to win that game after a knight to b4 idea with bishop to c6 to follow. Anyway, rook to c1, I think slight error because this seems to help me, b5. And now given a chance I will play knight to b4 and the a2 pawns on pre, and maybe something like knight to d5, bishop to c6. This is my plan, to put my bishop on c6, swap off light square bishops, and then I'm going to have good control of the centre of the board. And my queenside majority, rather than being a weakness, can actually be a very good strength here. I mean, these pawns on c4, b5, c7, a7 can be very strong later on in the game. So my opponent played a3 to stop this idea, but the problem with this is I can now go knight to a5. And there's a big square on b3, and already I was quite happy in my position. The game continued d5, knight to b3, rook to c3. I think maybe you can take on a7, but I've got a lot of options there. Probably I was just going to play rook to a8 with some exchange sacrifice in mind. But after, well, let's go back. After knight b3, rook to c3, I have a very strong move here, which gives me a slight advantage. Bishop to c6, and already here I think black has at least a small advantage. I'm winning this pawn on d5, and my queenside majority is extremely strong, and my knight on b3 is a very menacing piece. So very happy in this position. Let's see how the game continued. Bishop takes a7, rook to a8, bishop to f2, and now simply bishop takes d5. The bishops come off, I'm doing very well. I can even take my pawn, and the pawns are very strong. Game continued e4, bishop to b7, and maybe I even have a big advantage here. These pawns are very strong, while White's pawns in the centre are pretty useless. So a very successful opening, and well, good news for the classical Dutch, I think. And yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to start playing this a lot more regularly in future, this particular line. So after bishop to b7, queen to g4 was played, but now I can go rook to a6 to defend this pawn. I think my opponent should have flicked in a4 here, but I was just going to go rook takes, and after something like this, I was going to play rook to a6 again, queen to f7, and I wasn't going to take there, even though that does look very tempting now I've seen it. Is there a problem with that? Maybe there's not a problem. Maybe I can just take that pawn, simply, yeah. So anyway, rook to a6, and my opponent panicked here, I think he foresaw that my knight was going to come back around to c5, maybe into d3 or maybe into a4, so this knight's very strong. Or maybe I just continue with something simple like bishop to c5 is another good idea. But my opponent thought he'd sack the exchange here, but this is clearly insufficient. And the game was won, well, fairly easy. There's one point later on I'll go into, but the next couple of moves are very straightforward. And I played a simple plan of trying to use my queenside pawns. Queen d7, h4, c4, and now queen to c7. Clearly I'm just exchange up and white has a little compensation here. Bishop e1, bishop c5 check, and I'll whip this one off, so the rest should be fairly simple. And, oh well, it's clear exchange, isn't it? After this, okay, maybe rook to a8 is a safer move here, but I couldn't resist taking this pawn on b2. Queen d1, because this is quite forcing now, and it looked pretty good for me, this position. Queen to s6. There's a lot of tricks I have to be careful of here, because his queen is coming into d8 and d7, but my queen just about gets back in time to defend, and really white's other pieces are not active enough to really bother me at all. His bishop on g2 shut in, and the knight on e3 can't come into any squares because my e6 pawn is holding it away from these important squares. So queen to d7 was played, and he comes. Queen to f7, any check, then I go queen to f8, I'm safe enough, so he took this pawn, but now my c pawn starts to triumph, c3, and the game finished, knight to c4, c2, queen b2, rook c6, queen takes pawn, and e5, and here my opponent resigned because obviously I'm picking up the knight on c4, and I'll be a whole rook up for nothing. So I suppose a reasonably convincing game, that one, and like I mentioned, this is a good sign for you classical Dutch players out there who go knight to e4. This knight to e4 originally I thought was a bit dodgy because of the line which white played in this game, but as we see after bishop to e3, this bishop to d7 move, which has scored 3 out of 3 for me recently, looks like it gives black a very decent game. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if white can somehow get a small advantage here, but I'm yet to find out how, and white's going to be extremely well prepared if he wants to enter into this variation in future. So I think this is very promising news for Dutch, like I said. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm sorry about the delay. Now I'm going to go back to concentrating on the ebook so I can hopefully try to get this done in time for Christmas and get some of those secrets out there. Now the policy I'm going to have for the ebook is anyone who bought or buys the Killer Dutch DVD through Ginger GM website will get the DVD for the ebook for free sent to them. Anyone who's bought the Killer Dutch DVD through any other retailer, I'm afraid will have to purchase it through the website. So this is going to obviously favour people who bought it through Ginger GM. So yeah, any comments? Feel free to leave them. I will try to get around to doing some more DVDs in future. Cheers for listening.